find myself sitting in the back of a car I didn't recognize, with my uncle sitting beside me. In the passenger seat sat my aunt, and my mother was driving. The car, at least from the inside, appeared to be a sedan, with an ominous feeling looming throughout the cabin as we headed to an unknown location. I attempted to look out the windows, but everything outside of the car was just too bright and blurry. I settled back into my seat and began to notice that the inside of the sedan was looking more and more like the inside of a hearse, all dark and gloomy, with the curtains tucked to the side of the backside windows and the back window now blocked out by a dark-colored curtain on the other side, hiding what may or may not be a coffin. I wasn't going to check. Things were already getting too creepy for a kid like me. I felt my uncle begin to struggle all of a sudden. I looked to see that he was trying to fight off a small, disfigured man. He was at least 1.5 feet tall, maybe, and naked. Yeah, naked. He was standing on my uncle's knees, trying to get at him, but my uncle had both of its digitless knobs in his hands, preventing it from getting to his face and throat. Paralyzed from the scare, I began to scream, but only silence came out. I could feel my vocal cords vibrating, but nothing came out. This frightened me. I didn't know what else to do. Then it clicked. I'll try to get my aunt's attention, not wanting to distract my mom from driving. I look to her direction as I reach out and start to tap her shoulder, only to be frozen in shock from the fact that it wasn't my aunt. My eyes widened as I came to the realization that it was a broad-shouldered man with scars and stitches throughout his face, with a green pigment to his skin. He could barely turn to me as if his body was too stiff to do so, snarling at me as if telling me to leave him alone. And I did just that, pulling my hand away from his shoulder. I looked to check on my uncle, only to see that he had been killed by the small man who was now staring at me with bloodshot eyes. In a panic, I could only surmise that my mother was my last hope, so I began to tap the back of her seat, trying to yell for her, but to no avail, still having no voice. I then reached over the seat for her, only to find that my hand was now resting on what felt like fur. At this point, I knew I'd regret it if I looked, but my head moved on its own anyway. I came to the harrowing discovery of the one driving the hearse now being a beastly man, covered in fur, and now growling at me for disturbing him from his driving. Disturbed enough to feel the need to stop the car and begin thrashing in his seat, trying to get the seatbelt off. I quickly scooted back, pushing myself up against the back of my seat. The little man started to laugh at the beastly man, angering it more, using my uncle's head as his seat. The stitched-faced man groans in agitation, slowly reaching for his seatbelt as well. I felt danger looming over me. They were all focused on me, and at least 2 of them were going to hurt me. I needed to get out, so I reached for the door handle, only to find that there was no handle. Then, to add to my predicament, someone or something had begun to thrash about in the back of the hearse. There were sounds of wispy snarls and growls and the creaks and snaps of wood being broken to pieces. And then there was a snap. The beastly man had gotten itself out of its restraints by yanking the seatbelt with so much strength that the material fibers couldn't take it. They gave out and ripped. Without delay, he whipped around and reached out for me. Lady Luck, fortunately, had blown me a kiss, as I had finally found the door handle and opened it just at the right time, narrowly avoiding his beastly grip and falling out of the car onto the pavement. I didn't want to look back. I knew I had to run, so I got myself to my feet and did just that. Behind me, I could hear glass shattering, the beast growling, Stitchface snarling, wispy shrieks, and that stupid little man laughing at me. I ran as fast as I could, but it slowly dawned on me that I wasn't going to be fast enough to outrun them. I began to hear a rhythmic tapping rapidly approaching, a sound I remember hearing when my grandfather's dog walked on hard surfaces, the clitter-clatter of his claws scraping against the pavement. As I tried to run faster, the street had begun to stretch on me with each step, not allowing me to go any further. And then I woke up in my room, in the dark, which had only frightened me more. So, like any child would do, I cried out for my mom in tears, too scared to move from the bed, in fear of something being under it. I hear her bedroom door open, followed by the sound of her walking patterns making their way over to my door. It's so quiet that I could hear the inner workings of my doorknob as she turned it to come in. I found it odd that she didn't turn on the lights as she made her way over, but she always did complain about bright lights just after she had awoken from her sleep in the morning, so I left it be. I began to tell my mother, "Mom, I had a nightmare. You, Neff, and Aunt Wendy were there. We were in a car that looked normal, but started to..." I paused for a moment, noticing that she wasn't doing what she would normally do, which normally she would tell me to shut up, stop focusing in the nightmare, or else once I go back to bed, I would have the nightmare all over again. And she tended to be right. She was always right. Mothers tend to be. But this time, she was just sitting there, turned towards me. As she put her hand on my belly, a feeling of dread washed over me. Her hand, it was as cold as ice, which I could feel even through the blanket. She goes, "Oh, poor thing. You aren't going to like this one either." The end. I hope you enjoyed this story. It was inspired by a nightmare I had when I was 5 to 6 years old. The entire thing isn't exactly what happened, but again, it inspired a story, so I added what I could to make it seem interesting. Though, I think on its own, it would be pretty scary for a kid, especially a scaredy cat like I was back then. If you did enjoy the story, go ahead and like this video, and go ahead and leave some feedback in the comment section. If you disliked the story, that's okay too. Just let me know why you disliked it, and there you go. Everyone has their own opinions, right? But for now, I will let you go. Thank you for taking your time to listen. Be safe, and remember, do not let the boogeyman grab tight while you go 99.